Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and we've got some great news for you this morning as Manuel Ugarte proves Erik ten Hag wrong. He will be starting against Southampton next week. It would be absolutely incredibly criminal not to start him, and we'll give you the detail why. Also, a bit of a shock, Premier League interest in Antony. We'll be talking about that as well. And still Rabiot rumours going on, and another couple of bits I want to talk about as well. Plus, we've got the data I promised you last night, comparing Antony to Sancho statistically. Who came out better? I was right, but it was closer than I thought. So let's get into the news. We're going to start off talking about Ugarte, who has stunned Erik ten Hag, or proven ten Hag wrong, or silenced ten Hag, or sat ten Hag down, whatever way you want to call it. He played for Uruguay last night. Now remember, after the loss to Liverpool, Erik ten Hag said that it could take weeks for Ugarte to get up to speed. He's not had a pre-season and effectively, downplaying the Ugarte signing. Ten Hag can be a laptop manager. We can have that debate. But the bottom line is, whilst international football is not the same as the Premier League, and I'll argue that with anybody, it is still competitive football, especially in the South American qualifications. Uruguay, Paraguay, big game. Ugarte, arguably best player on the pitch, plays 79 minutes. Yeah, but he won't be fit to play against Southampton next week. I think this is where Ten Hag will get himself in trouble, is if he contradicts his own existence at Manchester United. We know there have been players that he has thrown in straight away. Three come to mind. Martinez was thrown in straight away. Antony, funnily enough, was thrown in straight away. I think Eriksen might have been thrown in straight away. There have been players that haven't. Varane, Casemiro, De Ligt. But if you know anything about what we've bought with Ugarte, then he is quintessentially not the player that's going to need time to adjust to the Premier League. I mean, I didn't watch the game, but a couple of people, Mazraoui got thrown in straight away as well, Mubs. I think Ugarte goes straight into Man United side, and we'll tell you why in a moment. But he goes straight into the Uruguay side, having had no pre-season at all, right? Look, just absolutely incredible, right? SofaScore gave him a 7.3, which I think made him the best player on the pitch, apart from Mendes, who was the right back for Uruguay. But look, more importantly, nobody on the pitch got near this. Ground duels won. He had 12, he won 9. Aerial duels won. He had 4, he won 3. Absolute animal, defensive monster, whatever you want to call it. And he really was the best midfielder on the pitch in relation to that by a very long way. No Paraguay midfielder, no Uruguay midfielder came anywhere near him. So absolute monster. I think the second best midfielder behind Ugarte was something like 7 duels and 5 won. He's 12 and 9. Most tackles on the pitch as well, 5 tackles. And interestingly, in the Uruguay midfield, he actually had the best passing as well. 60 passes and 52 accurate passes as well, with a percentage of 87%. So, I mean, look, I'm not really bothered about the stats for Uruguay. That's not my point. But the fact is, he's just played for Uruguay for 80 minutes. I think he came off on 78 minutes. He's just played for basically 80 minutes for Uruguay with no pre-season, and been the best and most aggressive tackler on the pitch, and also the best passer on the pitch. If we don't play him against Southampton, what's the bloody point? I don't care what the laptop says, computer says no. Get him in the bloody team. Casemiro was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Even Freddy Krueger was having nightmares about that performance from Casemiro. So I don't, nightmare on Elm Street, nightmare at Old Trafford. So he can't start. You put in a performance like that, you can't start the next game. It's not about whether Ugarte's fit enough. Casemiro cannot start. You can't be rewarded with starting away against Southampton with that sort of performance when you subbed off at half-time. I think people forget this as well. We still do have standards. You can't put in you absolutely have to be dropped for that performance. I'm not saying Casemiro's dropped forever, but you have to be dropped. Ugarte has to start. It's as simple as that. And but look, the stats don't massively bother me. It's the fact that he can go into a game of that magnitude. I mean, these games are massive in South America. I mean, I presume it's World Cup qualifiers. I'm not sure whether... No, would it be World Cup qualifiers? Yeah, it probably is. I don't know whether it's World Cup qualifiers or whatever it is. But to go in and play their first game for 80 minutes, I mean, I presume he'll play on Tuesday as well. So he's got another game as well. He'll start next week. I'd be absolutely... If he doesn't start next week, I'll be absolutely stunned. We play Southampton a week today at 12:30. He's just gone and joined up with Uruguay. He's played 80 minutes. He'll probably play again on Tuesday. He's been the best midfielder on the pitch by all accounts. Absolutely owned that midfield, possession-wise and tackling. You look at... And also, let me just flip the coin here, because there might be some people going, well, you don't know. You don't know about the stats. You don't know about the fitness levels required. You know why this Ugarte performance for Uruguay last night completely and utterly shuts down that laptop? Hopefully it is a laptop, because if it's the computer saying that Ugarte can't set, if the computer's saying to Ten Hag, Ugarte can't start, we've run the stats, I hope it's a laptop, because I'll just grab it and slam it down and say shut up and throw it in a lake. You know why? Because if you are Antony, who is a winger, or you are De Ligt, who is a centre-back, or you are Xerxes, who is a striker, absolutely fine. Maybe they're not up to speed. But it's impossible not to be up to speed when you're a midfielder. Kobe Mainoo, throw him in. Ugarte, throw him in. Collier, throw him in. In the midfield, you're either up to speed or you're not. There's no mythical, running machine that's the Premier League running machine. Oh, you're doing really well on that one, but this one's a super running machine. I mean, it's an absolute open goal, obvious decision to play him next Saturday, because the energy that this player has is what you need in the Premier League. And he's got that energy. There is no fitness test. There is no magic bloody written test or theory test to do to play in the Premier League. It's about tenacity. It's about fitness. It's about stamina. And he's got it in bucket loads. So, look, as I said at the time, I think people reacted to Ten Hag saying it's going to take him weeks to adapt because, they were panicking. I think the reason Ten Hag did it is because Ugarte, unfortunately, has got so much pressure on him because of the way the season has started, the way Casemiro has played, and the way our midfield is. He is not Kimmich. He is not Rodri. But the importance of Ugarte is that important. It's not even about him. It's about that position, isn't it? When you think about it, what's the most important position for United from now on? And obviously, we can't afford to have injuries in the defence or the attack. But that midfielder, if Ugarte flops, we're finished. The amount of people I've heard this week saying if Ugarte doesn't work out, we're screwed. We won't get anywhere near the top four. So, and it's not his fault. It's a massively important position, and it's got to work. You've got to throw him in. And I think the reason Ten Hag was saying it might take weeks for him to adapt, I don't think it's to do with fitness. I think that's just an easy way for Ten Hag to say it will take him time to adapt to the speed of the Premier League. Well, obviously it will take anybody a time to adapt to the Premier League. Of course it will. But this is not a fitness issue. I think Ten Hag is trying to temper expectation. And obviously, I think the biggest issue Ugarte will have is probably technically. I think the technical nature of the game, if I'm being absolutely blunt, I'm going to be blunt here. This has got nothing to do with fitness. It's got nothing to do with adapting to the Premier League. It's got everything to do to adapting to a shit midfield. If we're being completely honest, we're going to throw him into a midfield that's not going to be like PSG or Uruguay. When you play for Uruguay or PSG, you probably know your role and you know where everybody is. You get dropped into Man United's midfield and you go, where is everybody? It's like going paintballing against the, 3 or 4 other squads, and there you are on your own, and you haven't got any paint. It's that's the problem. Ugarte is, I think, is the biggest thing. Is when he gets thrown in next week and his fullbacks are bombing forward, his midfield is non-existent. Is that Bruno in the distance? Get me some bloody binoculars. That's the big thing. It's adjusting to whatever our system is, because it's not simple. Which is why, as I said before, I would go with a pivot, a double pivot, away from home, because we've got 3 away games out of 4. I would adjust the midfield and just go with a double pivot. You can still do everything you want to do, but just go double pivot. That's what I would do. I really would. Unless the system changes, don't think, doesn't matter who's in the role, says United 1. I mean, I think that's massively naive. I mean, it's like having a bag of cement or, Kante in your midfield, isn't it? I mean, Casemiro is just not got the legs to do that job. So, of course, it'll be an improvement having somebody who's got legs. I mean, Vishal says Casemiro's better than Ugarte. Pfft, mate, you've had a bad week. Can we have a prayer for Vishal? Bloody hell. That, it takes all sorts. The Sorry Nation channel would have appreciated your Roy Crean or Roy Copper comment last night. Also, I think laptop managers should be paid less, says Cyril. Thank you very much for that. And Ravi, welcome to Members Club. I hope Casemiro and Ugarte play, give Kobe a rest, says Liam. I think that could work away from home, I do. I think this statement was to protect Ugarte, says B. Everyone is expecting miracles from him, and if he messes up, then it's another pylon. It's mind games, says B. I completely agree with that, and I said that last week, didn't I? I think Ten Hag is trying to temper expectation with Ugarte, and honestly, if I was the manager of Man United and I was asked, will Ugarte start against Southampton after a Liverpool loss, I would say we're going to have to wait and see. It's going to take him time to adjust, because if I say yes, he starts, you just build that pressure up, and really you want to announce he's starting an hour before. But that's not how Man United works. We're not. This is not the Eredivisie. It's not Ajax, which is what I think some people in that football club struggle with, is the sheer expectation around Manchester United. And I'm absolutely convinced Ugarte will start. If you're tuning in a little bit late, I'll just summarise this. And if you've been watching from the start, you can just get excited about this. Ugarte played for Uruguay last night. He played 80 minutes. He was arguably the best player on the pitch. He was certainly the best midfielder on the pitch. His stats were absolutely incredible, but more importantly, from a fitness point of view, he made more ground tackles and duels than anybody on the pitch. He made more passes than anybody in the Uruguay midfield. It was an absolutely all-action performance from Ugarte. And interestingly, from a heat map point of view, I wonder if I can just show you this. I might be able to do it on here. So from a heat map point of view, if I was to take Casemiro, imagine this is Ugarte. This is where his hottest action was, here, in this area. I don't know why, because I didn't see the game, but he was most hot, his heat map, he was most hot there and in and around here where you would expect. So it was orange around this area, but red here. So I don't know what that's all about. I'm going to go and try and find out. But yeah, that was his hottest area. And then he was around here a lot as well, which you would expect. But for some reason, that was his hottest. Ignore everybody else. That's something else. But just in relation to if Casemiro was Ugarte, that was his hottest area yesterday and around here. I mean, I don't know whether that means he was implementing a high press. I don't know. Maybe somebody in the chat watched it. Maybe they can help us on that. Anyway, Ugarte should be back. I think Ugarte will have the same impact Casemiro did in his first year, says Sticks. Look, honestly, I think if you put... I'm trying to think. If you put Alvarez from West Ham in Man United's midfield, I think it would be a massive improvement. I really, really do. I think if you put Sarr from Spurs in Man United's midfield, it would have a massive difference. Onana from Villa would make a massive difference. I'm just giving you players that I think maybe aren't as fashionable. Gravenberch at Liverpool. We just haven't got anybody who can do this role. And I think that's what will happen. Anyway, let's move on. We can always come back to that, but it's a nice positive story, which is what we always want. Just a heads up for today, by the way. I know it's the weekend, and you might be despairing about no football. Well, there is football. You can find it. I mean, I'm very much on the podcast about the lower leagues this season, and a few of my teams are playing today. Charlton are home to Rotherham at 3:00. I'll be keeping an eye on that. Solihull Moors are playing as well. They're at home to Forest Green Rovers. But more importantly, England are playing against Ireland, which will be an absolute... I don't like international football, but I love Ireland. I lived there for years. Very passionate. They'll be absolutely up for this, and I think it'll be a good game. I'm doing a watch along at 5:00 for that. So join me on That's Football for that. And we have an 8:00 show tonight as well. Remember, we do 8:00 Saturday now. Now I've binned off TalkSport. or Talk. I said their name wrong there. But yeah, so 8 o'clock tonight. Do you think we will get Garnacho and Ahmad start for Southampton? No, it'll be Rashford, Nate. I mean, I want to talk about this Antony story, but with the Rashford thing, I've come to accept that there's just no point moaning about it. I think after a game, you can give him a 4 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. I'm just going to assess Rashford on his performances now, because I think this whole why is he starting thing is boring, absolutely boring, and I think that the bottom line is the way I've come to think with the Rashford thing is it's incredible how many games he starts, it's incredible how many chances he gets, but I actually think it comes from high up in the football club. I don't know what Sir Jim's point is. Maybe he's on board with it or not. But I certainly think it comes from the very highest areas of the football club. I know for a fact, firsthand, that Rashford's got a lot of power at Manchester United and still does. Up until the end of last season, he still does. But I think this comes from the top of the football club. I think that they are absolutely obsessed that this player needs to be playing for Manchester United. It's a symbol thing. It's who he stands for. It's where he's come from. It's where he, Manc born and bred. The money they've paid him, the contract they've given him. I think this is very similar to probably what Barcelona had with Messi. And people are going to laugh about that. But I think Rashford is seen as the poster boy of that football club. And I think people struggle with why he starts games and everything. But we know it was part of Ten Hag's interview that I will get this player playing well. And whether you agree with it or not, I find it absolutely easier to deal with, knowing that the only logical reason behind this is because within the football club, they really, really, really rate this player and want him to be, one of the stars of the team. So they're never going to not give up. And I wouldn't say I agree with it, but I think there's just too much evidence to suggest that it's coming from anywhere else other than, the actual boardroom level and structure of the football club, that we've got to get the best out of Marcus. And I do understand it. I do understand it in a sense. I don't agree with it, but I do understand it because there was no interest in him in the summer. He's the biggest earner or one of the biggest earners. He's probably got the biggest contract. And it's absolutely impossible to loan him out or kick him in the reserves. So they have to get the best out of him. And I think Project Rashford is still very much at the forefront of the football structure of Manchester United. It was certainly the project when Ten Hag came in. And I think because of the contract that Ten Hag and the Glazers gave Rashford before Ineos came in, I think it's still very much Project Rashford for Ineos as well. And you can understand it because if you give up on it, what do you do? There's not a lot we can do. So I think Rashford will continue to start and hopefully start scoring as well. With Rashford and the Glazers, he wouldn't have this PR and brand image from above if he didn't get a knighthood, says Martin Saunders. Mainu's still only on 20k a week is a joke, says Sanel. I'm sure that'll get sorted out. Anyway, let me talk to you about this story about Antony. So this has come in from Caught Offside. You could say caught with your pants down if they've got this wrong. But look, Ben Jacobs, Fabrizio Romano, they do bits for Caught Offside. So, I'm not saying it's true, but I'm not saying it's complete and utter nonsense either. They've put a story out today saying that Newcastle tried for Anthony Elanga at the end of the transfer window because they want to bring in a winger, and that they will continue their interest in Elanga, but if they can't, Eddie Howe is a big admirer of Antony. Now, before you start laughing or choking on your coffee this Saturday morning, bear with for a minute, because Antony to Newcastle sounds absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm sure there'll be people in the chat saying they'd be better off signing Ronald McDonald from McDonald's than Antony because, if you're going to get a clown, you may as well get the best one. But you know what? It surprises me if there's any truth in it, but is he completely useless? Is that what we're saying? I mean, there's very big question marks about what he's going to do at Man United, and I would say it's going to be very, very difficult for him to, prove himself at Manchester United. But it's sort of it sort of fits with the sort of manager that Eddie Howe is. When you look at what Eddie Howe has done, Harvey Barnes, Leicester, Dan Burn, Trippier, you know, there are so many players that he has brought into that football club and got the very best out of them, that somebody like Antony for a reasonable price would... And look, there'll be Newcastle fans out there saying, absolutely not, we don't want him, because that's the perception. And it probably wouldn't happen. But what caught my attention was that, well, one, it probably does fit in with the sort of thing Eddie Howe has done in relation to, you know, seeing talents that aren't fully realising what they're all about and then getting the best out of them. But also, two, who's better, Elanga or Antony? And everyone's going to say Elanga because Elanga's doing it at Forest. But I just don't think Antony's useless. I don't. I think there is a very high bar to be judged against at Manchester United. Of course there is. But Scott McTominay's probably going to do okay at Napoli. Would never have started him for Manchester United. We're probably one of the hardest football clubs to play for in the world. I think we're the hardest football club to play for in the Premier League. And again, people will be going, what are you talking about? It's harder to play for Man City. It's harder to play for Arsenal. Of course it is, because you're trying to win the Premier League. But what I mean is the baggage, attention, scrutiny that you get playing for Manchester United makes it, for me, the hardest club to play for in the Premier League, because nobody bothers you at Man City. Nobody really bothers you at Arsenal or Liverpool. Nobody really bothers you. Nobody's talking about Gakpo on TalkSport. Nobody's really talking about Martinelli on Sky. But Antony will be spoken about multiple times a day on multiple mainstream outlets, even though he's fourth choice. So I think when you play for Manchester United, we're not the best team in the Premier League by a long way, but there is a lot of pressure, whether you're Marcus Rashford, Antony, Casemiro, Harry Maguire. I'd never sit here and... I mean, bloody hell. The Manchester United, how many websites are there? How many, YouTube channels are there? Like, how many are there for Man City? How many are there for Liverpool? How many are there for Arsenal? And how many people actually watch it? The attention and interest in Manchester United is intense for any player. And I think if you leave Manchester United and you go to a club where that attention isn't so intense, it's probably like a holiday. I mean, imagine if you were somebody like Antony and you went and played for Newcastle. Straight away, you'd be like, bloody hell, my life's my own again. There's less attention. So also, I think the expectation would drop. So look, I don't think he's completely useless, but whether he'd end up at Newcastle or not, we'll have to wait and see. But it does feed in nicely to what I was going to say. Remember last night on the Friday night show, I was saying about Sancho or Antony, who's the bigger flop. And a lot of you were saying that, well, Sancho's clearly had a better Man United career than Antony has. And then other people were saying, well, how can he have when he refused to play? He also had that 4 months off in the season before. Based on the Premier League, taking it from Transfer Market, Jadon Sancho played 58 games in the Premier League for Manchester United. He got 9 goals and 6 assists. So 58 games, 9 goals, 6 assists in the Premier League. Antony, 55 games, 5 goals, 3 assists. So yes, as I thought last night, Sancho has had the slightly better Man United career. But it's not a massive difference, and also Sancho has got that whole attitude, turning up for training late, refusing to play alongside him as well. I think you're probably arguing over, they've both been flops, if we're being honest. The only feather in Antony's hat is that he's still here and can improve on that. But yeah, it's considering we've spent £150 million on those two players. We've had 113 Premier League games from them with 14 goals and 9 assists for 150 million. It's crap. It's really crap, isn't it? Combined in the Premier League, yeah, it's 113 games, 14 goals, 9 assists, and 100 and actually it's more than that. It's nearly 160 million, isn't it? So absolutely terrible. I don't know what the future is for Antony, but I do think that there was a decent player there at Ajax that's really struggled at Manchester United. He won't be the first and he won't be the last. I think there are players like Memphis struggled at Man United as well. Kagawa, there's been plenty of players that struggle at Manchester United, but hopefully these sort of signings are in the past. I think that's what I would say. Wasn't there on the last night show, says Rub. What is your take on Tuchel snubbing United story? Look, can I just say that there was a lot of comments last night and the night before, because I spoke about Jurgen Klopp on Thursday and his comments about Sancho. And then last night we spoke about Tuchel and this story about how he'd rejected the job because of the transfers. And then there was a lot of people in the replies saying this story's from months ago. It's not from months ago. It was literally from yesterday lunchtime. So I don't really get what your point is. It's the international break. We're going to have more in-depth conversations. I enjoy it. A lot of people enjoy it. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. But that story was from yesterday. There might have been stories about Tuchel rejecting the job in May. I mean, we sort of covered that. But that story was from a journalist in Bild yesterday. That's where that story came from. The honest answer is, Rob, I don't know. I really don't know. But going back to an older story from the start of the week, remember I was telling you about the payout that Erik ten Hag will get if he gets sacked, and it's somewhere between 10 and 20 million pounds, which is a significant amount of money. There was actually a really interesting article yesterday from an ex-employee of Everton. I think they were like a CEO or something like that. Or anyway, they were basically asked about Manchester United, and they were saying that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's made a schoolboy error, because by bringing in Van Nistelrooy and Heck, when he has to sack Ten Hag, he also has to sack all of them, and the cost of that will be absolutely huge. So they're going to have to give Ten Hag more time than they probably would have, because they've invested so much money in the summer, and if it goes wrong, it's such a bad loss of money for Ineos, and they look really, really, amateur. I disagree with that. I completely disagree with that, and I think a few of you will understand why. It will cost money to sack Ten Hag, there's no doubt about that. And that will give him a little bit more time. I think he will get till, maybe Christmas, depending on the results. But what I would say is, I don't think Ineos will hesitate to sack Ten Hag because they've then got to sack Ruud van Nistelrooy and Heck and everybody else. I think we all know if Ten Hag gets sacked, Ruud van Nistelrooy will be the interim until the end of the season. So I disagree with that. I don't think there's a schoolboy error in relation to if you sack Ten Hag, you've got to sack all his staff. I think the reason Van Nistelrooy was brought in was, one, because Ten Hag wanted him and he's a good fit and he's an ex-player. But two, if you do sack Ten Hag, you've got a ready-made interim to walk in. So just on that, if you read that today, I wouldn't be worrying about that. I don't think that's an issue at all. I think one thing about this structure that's being built at Manchester United is that contingency is obviously very important. I mean, I look at the Casemiro. Look, I'm just riffing with you here, but I look at the Casemiro situation, and I'm absolutely convinced that we're already looking at his replacement. Even though Ugarte's come in and Collier's coming through, I guarantee you we're looking at Casemiro's replacement for next summer, and I guarantee you will buy a midfielder next summer, 100%. I'm absolutely convinced that we are looking now for Casemiro's replacement. Certainly Eriksen will go as well. So we'll bring a midfielder in next summer. And I think Casemiro will get the squeeze this year. He'll get less and less game time. And then next summer we'll buy another midfielder. And he'll really realise that your last few years are going to be sat on a bench earning 350k, or you can go and play elsewhere. But yeah, I think we're absolutely making those plans, and I think we have those plans in place like Brighton do with the manager as well. I think we're not all in financially with Ten Hag. I really disagree. I think there will be a big payout for Ten Hag if he gets the sack, but if he gets the sack, I think we would go with Van Nistelrooy and what we've got till the end of the season. Gems has just gifted 5 memberships. Thank you very much. Who do you think we will bring in as a midfielder? I think there are loads of midfielders out there. Lots of people were talking about Zubamendi. I think Edison, Atalanta, is very interesting. We know we had that conversation with Atalanta in the summer. I expected him to move in the summer to Liverpool. That didn't happen. At the start of the summer, I half expected us to make a move. That didn't happen. Last January, Newcastle were looking to make a move under Dan Ashworth. I know for a fact that we scouted a lot of players in Atalanta last year. Scalvini was mentioned a lot, but Edison would 100% be there. I know he's well liked within the football club. Obviously, Dan Ashworth has come in. He's a big fan. And we've got good relationships with Atalanta. So I think Ederson next summer as a natural replacement for Casemiro would complement our mid. I mean, look, if we in an ideal world, for me, the midfield is where games are won and lost, and the midfield is where, you know, Liverpool are very exciting in their midfield. Obviously, Man City are. You need more than what we've got, but if we can transition over the next year into a midfield that was something like Ugarte, Mainu, Collier, Ederson, Mount, Bruno, I'd be very happy with that 6. I would, really would. Takunda says Wharton's the guy. I think Wharton's a myth, mate. I'm here to be proved wrong, but I think Wharton's a myth. He's going to cost upwards of 70, 80 million pounds, and we're not that football club. And we shouldn't be that football club. I want to be that football club, but we're not that football club that just spends our budget on one player. Man City can. We're not there yet. So I think Wharton's a pipe dream, a fan theory, if you like. AM has been a member for 15 months. Thanks, mate. You're a legend. James has gifted 5 memberships. Legend. Jack says, all these big name flair signings we've made, and without a doubt, when you describe Ugarte as a monster, I've never been so excited. Have a good one. Well, it's nice to have some positivity, isn't it, Jack? And as I said, there's been a lot of talk this week that's been negative talk around the manager and the result, and that's justifiable. But waking up this morning, getting the messages from people who watched the game, and then, you know, people were sending me screenshots of his stats and stuff, and I was just like, you know what? I in my head I went, sit down, Ten Hag, but I don't really mean sit down, Ten Hag, because I absolutely agree that Ten Hag said what he said to protect Ugarte and not hype up expectation. But the player he is, he's played 80 minutes for his country. He's been the most proactive, aggressive player on the pitch. It's still a week until Southampton. He's got another game for Uruguay on Tuesday. There is no reason he doesn't start next week. And actually, can I just say again, who's with me on this? Man United means something. Whether we're getting relegated, whether we're in a Carabao Cup final, whether we're playing for the bloody Champions League, Manchester United means something. The people who put the shirt on may be of different qualities, but it should still mean something. And regardless of whether Ugarte starts next week, and he should, Casemiro can't start next week and Ugarte be on the bench. Casemiro can play next to Ugarte and Mainu can get a break, but Casemiro has to be dropped as the holding midfielder next week. I don't care. If he says Ugarte's not ready, put Collier there. But do not start Casemiro next week. There has to be a result to your performance. You cannot start a game for Man United after a performance like that and as if nothing's happened. There has to be accountability. That's the word I'm talking about. And it was shit. It was absolutely shit. And you can't send that message out. You can't go, you were absolutely rubbish. I subbed you at half time. It was embarrassing. But guess what? You start in the next game. As a manager, you can't undermine yourself like that. Rory C says, such a sliding doors moment. If Sancho held fire for 24 hours, he would still be here and Antony would be gone. What 24 hours are you talking about, Rory? Are you talking about... Oh, I think I think what you're talking about there, Rory, sorry for computing this, but I think that what you're talking about is that when Ten Hag said that Sancho hadn't trained well and wasn't in the squad against Arsenal, Sancho did the tweet and the very next day Antony got arrested. Yeah. If Sancho had stayed quiet for 24 hours, then maybe things could have been different. But look, you know what? For me, the passion is Man United. Disrespect Man United, you're out on your arse. I don't understand Sancho FC when Sancho doesn't like Manchester United. And anyone who says, well, he does. No, he doesn't. He doesn't like Manchester United because there's no reason to not put pictures of Man United up or, you know, anything like that. That's got nothing to do with his argument with Ten Hag. He's got a problem with United. But I also would say, and I don't know whether anyone else in the chat is like this, I'm quite bad at that. I'm quite bad at reacting to things and not taking a step. So, you know, it is a sliding doors moment, Rory, and it could have been very different. But there's plenty of those. And hopefully it'll work out for the best for everybody. No, I'd retract that. I don't want it to work out for Sancho at Chelsea. I absolutely don't. Whole ethos of a top club means nobody is guaranteed a start. I remember Giggs, etc. being benched after just one bad game. It's about standards, says Elliot. Sancho never loved us, says Jasmine. Ineos should look for a better goalkeeper, says Sanjid. I've got a video coming on the goalkeeper. I think you're going to very much enjoy it, so keep an eye out for that. We see how Rashford resting the whole day at the wing, waiting for ball and losing the moment he receives it. Whole players like Diaz run into vacant positions and strike a first-time shot for goal, says Jack. I don't want to jump on trends, but it feels like he doesn't have tactical flexibility like other managers who can adjust their tactics to other teams with different tactics like Slot did, says Lou. Casemiro could play further forward with Ugarte, says Richard. I wouldn't do that, Richard. I think Casemiro can play with Ugarte, but I wouldn't play him further forward. I think we have a pivot that we need to play. As I said, look, I'm not the manager. You're not the manager. But we've got 3 of our next 4 Premier League games away from home. If it doesn't matter who you are. There's probably Man City, Arsenal, and maybe Liverpool that would look at 3 Premier League games away from 4 and think, let's go and get 10 points. That's very, very difficult to do for any other team. Premier League's challenging. Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Southampton away, Spurs at home. I'm not looking at those games and thinking, let's open up the midfield again and play basketball. I'm going double pivots. Let's tighten up here. I'd still want to play a higher line, Martinez and De Ligt. I'd still play a higher line, but I'd have a pivot there as well. 2 midfielders together, platform away from home. You dig in a little bit. We know we've got the flair. Will he do that? I don't know whether he can do that. I think stylistically, there's a lot of pressure on the way we're going to play this season, isn't there? Look, thanks everyone for tuning in. Really, really appreciate it. A good news story this morning about Ugarte, so make sure you smash a like on the video. 80 minutes for Uruguay, arguably man of the match, certainly the best midfielder on the pitch. Loads of tackles, loads of passes, loads of fitness, loads of stamina. Probably play on Tuesday as well. Still a week till he plays against Southampton. He must play. He will play. He surely must play. Ten Hag's got to pick him, and that's positive for us. I'm on That's Football for an England-Ireland watch-along later. Trust me, you might not like international football, but the atmosphere and intensity of this game is going to be great. Can't wait for it. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe, and I'll speak to you all a little bit later. Take care. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.